Old people?
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. 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 So whatever you said, I didn't hear it. Okay. And she said to my father, I am sorry to tell you, but I will not wait here for the Germans to come loaded us up on truck and take us somewhere which we don't know what awaits us there. My father was more reluctant to adopt her plan. My father traveled the roads of Poland many times with for business purposes, and he knew the Polish sentiment toward Jews, and unfortunately, it was a hostile, anti-Semitic attitude. Wherever he went, he encountered it. He was afraid that this could backfire. My mother had to come up with a plan. She was a very unassuming woman, a quiet woman, modest woman, but she was an activist by nature, and what pushed her is the danger luring, unknown danger luring, and she tried to escape it with a plan. So she said to him, okay, see all these refugees passing by, we will join them. We will join them and masquerade as Polish refugees. Now, my father liked this plan, and yet he hesitated. And he hesitated because of his personal appearance. Now, look at my father's face and look at my mother's face. My mother looked like a typical Polish, all European face, I would call it. You couldn't place her. She had brown hair, blue eyes, straight little nose. I, who am not in the picture here, have, and you can tell, from looking at me, I have Slavic features, namely fleshy lips, wide nose, blue eyes, and brown hair. So I looked like I wasn't blonde like many Polish kids, but I would pass easily for a Polish kid. My father noticed, if this is a 1935 picture, terrible cameras there. Look at his face. It's what we call today an ethnic face, a Jewish face, an elongated face, a longer nose, dark hair, black hair all, and dark eyes. And he was afraid that because of his personal appearance, we will be endangered. So he was reluctant to go, but my mother convinced him. And at a certain time, she prepared a bag for perishable foods, didn't know how long we'd be on the road. The winters in Poland are severe, and they simply took her. She just filled up some bag with winter clothing And toward the kind of end of summer in 1941, I am 4 years old. We left our home, and we became instantly homeless. To me, it was an adventure. To a 4-year-old looking what's happening was an adventure. I thought we were going on a picnic. We had food with us. We slept under the stars. And when the weather was bad, we snuck into a barn, and we were progressing very, very slowly, deliberately slowly, with one group of refugees or another we attached ourselves to. Now, to me, it was a picnic. To my parents, it was far from a picnic. They were drifting with refugees. They had a destination, they both refugees. My parents didn't. They were drifting into nowhere. And it's such an unsettling feeling if you can understand it. It just, I can imagine the burden upon them going somewhere that you don't know what you are going to encounter. Nevertheless, they kept going. The winters were very trying. We were sleeping mainly in barns, covered by straw, and we were very lucky because every barn had plenty of straw, and sneaking out of the barns early in the morning and continuing going south. At a certain, and this is already end of winter 1941. In the spring of 42, some activity on the road alarmed our parents, my parents. They noticed German on motorcycles, stopping some refugees, interrogating them, picking some up with trucks and letting others go. If they found us, encountered us and stopped us, we would be dead, because we had to take off, obviously, to masquerade as a refugee, you have to take off the star. And this is punishable by death, as I said before. So they were very alarmed by it, and they tried to secure some shelter, some permanent shelter, to get off the road. And again, the element of uncertainty. When you knock on the door, who will open the door? Will it be a kind person or a hostile person? They didn't know. Nevertheless, they knocked on the door. A man opens the door, gives them one look and says, "Go away, you refugees." He didn't say even, "Go away, you Jews," but "you refugees." Possibly some refugees were bothering him by knocking on the door, begging for food or whatever they were doing. But he became hostile. My father kind of anticipated it and had in his hand 5 coins, gold coins, and showed it to him and said, we offer you a business proposition. He says, we don't want anything from you but some shelter. We are tired, we are walking too much. Can we rest in your place? Here are 5 coins. The man became instantly friendly. He was just amazed these peasants heard about gold, never saw a gold coin, and took us to a bunker, which is kind of an underground cellar that every peasant had next to his barn. It was, gave us some straw, a bucket for waste, a kerosene lamp, and some food. And we stayed there about 10 days. By the way, I wanted to tell you that the gold coins that we took with us, my mother designed and a very ambitious tool belt, I would call it. All the peasants were wearing tool belts. She didn't want to arouse suspicion, so we could be killed for it and robbed. And she took a piece of very coarse fabric, attached to it with thread, row after row of coins, covered it with another piece of fabric. And my father was wearing a very heavy and expensive belt. So from time to time, used to take off a coin from it, try to buy some food. It was very hard to secure some food, simply because there was not food, there was hunger in the land. And for a gold coin, you got a piece of dried up bread, a boiled potato, maybe some milk for me if we were lucky, and that's it. Now, we stayed there, like I said, 10 days. The man came down one time with something holding in his hand, covered by a kerchief, smelled so good. And he said, "It's my birthday. My wife baked a lot of goods, and I came here to share it with you." We were surprised. He uncovered it, and it was blueberry pie. My father thanked him profusely. He said, "Oh, enjoy it," and walked out. It was evening. My father took a piece, gave me, broke away, took another piece, gave to my mother, and himself began to eat ravenously. We haven't tasted a piece of pastry already almost a year. Now, I took one bite, swallowed it, and threw up instantly. And the same thing happened to my mother. My father, who already swallowed a few bites, looked at us, stopped eating, and then fell to the floor in terrible agony. The man poisoned us, tried to get rid of us for one reason or another, tried to murder us. My mother rushed to him, begged him to open his mouth. She wanted to stick a finger in to make him gag, so he throws up the poison that was threatening him. The pain was so severe that his jaws were clenched. He couldn't respond to her pleas. So she settled on the floor, put his head in her lap to make him comfortable, and she was crying. She was completely helpless, she felt. I was sitting on the floor, holding on to his shirt and crying too. My father was terribly sick, I thought. Then he stopped moving. He stopped, and I felt relieved that he stopped moving. I thought he fell asleep, that he is now more peaceful. I couldn't understand why my mother continued crying, but she was crying for a good reason. She was crying because she knew that he died. And we sat there. She was crying, like she was. Suddenly she shook it off and said to me in an urgent voice, "Come, we have to leave. We have to leave now." I became hysterical. I said to her, "The father is sleeping. We cannot leave him here." She said, "We have to go. We have to go immediately." And according to her thinking, later I found out, she felt danger. She felt that the men will come back to see whether he did a good job killing us. Seeing two survivors, he would finish us off. And she felt we were in danger. She had the presence of mind to grab the tool belt with the gold in it, and yanked me out of this hall, and we ran into the field. And here is now a young mother in her 20s, trying to protect herself and her son from two powerful enemies. Interestingly enough, that the enemy who was dangerous, the Nazis, we kind of fooled by pretending that we are refugees. The second enemy you cannot fool, namely hunger. When you're hungry, you're hungry. And we were hungrier and hungrier. And I remember she was looking at me, and anytime she looked at me, she was crying. I must have looked terrible, very skinny and very neglected. She was trying to buy the coin with a coin or to some provisions. Eventually, they refused to give her anything because possibly they didn't have it. I have no idea, but we didn't have food. And my mother was running out of what to do. Now you see this picture here of a forest. Actually, the road, imagine, was wider. On one side, you had trees, dense forest. On the other side, you have, it's not an accurate picture, because there were a village after village after village. And the Germans were interrogating the Poles because there was partisan activity in these wars. So she used to sneak in to a village, look in garbage, picking up anything she considered edible, but how can you call garbage edible? Out of desperation, you do it. You do it. She used to put this in her mouth, chew it up, and give me. And I ate it without complaining at all, like it's the best delicacy. She herself ate it too. When you eat garbage, there is no nutrition in it. And at a certain point, she felt that she was slowly dying. She moved to the side of the road, leaned against the tree, took me in her arms, and lowered her head and just sat there waiting to die. And then suddenly she feels somebody tapping her shoulder, saying to her, she raised her eyes, she said, a woman was standing over her. She said, my goodness, it looked like you were dead. Finding dead people along the road was something very common. People just starve. They just starved and collapsed. So she thought another corpse, and she was happy to see her alive. And she said, the boy is okay too. I looked up, and my mother whispered to her, please bring us a piece of bread and some water. And the woman rushed to the house and brought us some water and excuse me.
Speaking of water.
And then invited us into the house. She helped my mother to get up. My mother could barely walk. She leaned on her shoulder. The woman picked me up, and slowly we dragged ourselves into the house. In the house, which was pleasant and cool, unlike the outside, which was hot, she spread a blanket on the floor. We crawled on this blanket and fell asleep until next morning. She saved our lives, this woman, for sure. In the morning, she extended her invitation and she said, you can stay with me a few more days and you can recover a little bit. You look so run down, and but you have to wash up and get rid of these clothes. They're probably full of lice and so forth. I will give you some of my clothes. She even prepared a warm bath for my mother. This is kind of as close I could come up with a picture of a bath, of a metal-made bath, and that's what they did their laundry in it and took a bath. There were no showers. And then she said something which startled and alarmed my mother. She said, give your boy also a bath in the same water. I cannot afford to warm up more water. He looks so filthy. And my mother she said, oh, no, don't, I don't want to bother you anymore. We will just leave now. It will be fine. She says, no. I want him to be clean, and I will leave him some clothes left over from my son. She told us that she had a son who, more or less my age, who played outside by the road, found a grenade that probably fell off a truck or something carelessly. They pulled the pin and blew up. The boy got killed by the grenade. And that's why she kind of was zeroed in, especially on me. She left my mother a skirt and a blouse and some of that unfortunate boy clothing and she said, give him a bath. And my mother was still saying, no. And the woman was becoming suspicious. So we had to do with my mother. told me to take off my clothes. I took off my clothes. I climbed into the tub. But the woman noticed. What did she notice? That I was circumcised, of course. She smiled. I'll be back in a few minutes, she said. She walked out. Meanwhile, I took the bath, put my clothes on. I felt really good about it. She came back in a few minutes later and said, my mother never forgot this. She said, with a Polish policeman, she came. And she said, take these parszywe Żydy, that means leprous Jews, out of here. It's such a insulting words, leprous Jews. And he took us away. He took us away to my mother begged him to let us go. Nobody will know. He was afraid. One favor I will do to you. I will not take you to a Gestapo station, he said, because they would kill you there on the spot. I will take you to a regular police station. You will survive a few days there. That's it. So he brought us to a police station, pushed us into a cell which was filled with people caught in roundups locally. Some of them are crying, some of them are praying. We kind of found a spot on the floor, sat down and waited. Within a few minutes, another Polish policeman comes. The Germans used a lot of Polish policemen because of language problem, language barrier. That's how they solved their language barrier. The Polish government now telling that, oh, we didn't participate, we didn't cooperate. It makes me laugh. They were more than willing to cooperate, and very much so. And he asked the women, who of you can cook well? My mother raised her hand immediately. And he looked at her and said to her, he was a smart guy, this guy, he said, you are too young to be a good cook, but since you are the cleanest of them all, come with me. And took her to the kitchen. Very shortly afterwards, she found out that the cook of the police station was a terrible cook, and she excelled very much in cooking. I don't know whether my son Ari remembers her cooking, but my wife remembers her cooking, and she is still impressed with it. And she excelled so much into her cooking that we stayed there 3 weeks. The Jews in the cell didn't stay there 3 weeks. After it was filled up, they used to load them up on trucks, take them away. And it repeated itself continuously. They used to massacre them in the woods, neighboring woods. That's what we heard from Polish people later. I wasn't allowed into the kitchen, and my mother begged the commander of the so-called the commandant of the jail to give an order to the police people who were loading up the Jews on the truck not to touch me, because it would be easy. Or a little boy throw it in the truck and that's it. And he was kind enough to oblige her. She was talking to him Polish only. And I said later, why did you talk Polish? Don't you understand German? She said, I understand German. I didn't want him to know that I understand German. Why is that, I asked, as a kid. And she said, I cannot explain it. It was a feeling. And so he obliged me, and I stayed in this cell many times, days, empty, all alone. The cell was empty. We regained our strength there because we ate fairly well. And about 3 weeks later, I don't know why, possibly because of Russian troop movement, they had to evacuate this complex and go somewhere else. And she overheard the police, the commandant, telling his deputy, in the morning, get rid of the woman and the child. So as an activist, she immediately began making plans to escape. She found the wire and try to imagine the door in the cell was a wooden door. In the middle of it was a window. Luckily enough, there was no window in it. There was no glass in it. It was just a hole, an opening. And it was barred on the outside. My mother used to made a loop out of the wire and extended her hand outside and was trying to pull the wire. After many, many tries, making sure that the guard who was walking back and forth disappeared behind the end, the band, back and forth he was going. And finally she opened it. She grabbed the gold coins and we ran into the back of the cell. We were stopped by barbed wire. Didn't stop my mother. It was rusty barbed wire. She opened the barbed wire for me to crawl out and lacerated her hands completely with it. She didn't care. She opened it. I crawled, scratched my back, ripped my clothes, and then she pushed her way through it, scratched her whole body by it, and ripped her clothes too. And we ran to the road. On the road, like in a movie, the timing was such that we came out, it was dawn, kind of. It was barely light coming up, very early in the morning. A horse and a buggy and a farmer was passing by. My mother approached him, told her the truth. I escaped from the police station. And please, we have to remove ourselves from here as soon as possible, please. And the man was so amazed that a young woman dared to escape from the German and was successful, that he gave us a ride. And pretty soon we kind of moved away from the police area. Then there, after a while, he told us, you have to get off. There is too much traffic now, and you look very suspicious, because we were bloody and ripped clothes. So we were hiding in the woods, in the shallow woods for the evening. To start, my mother looked in a village for some clothes hanging online. And sure enough, some lazy housewife did us a favor and didn't collect her clothes for the night. And it was hanging there. And my mother didn't feel that good about stealing some clothes, but these were times of desperation, she said. And she found for herself a blouse and a skirt. And for me, she learned her lesson. She was so happy to find there a girl's dress. And she said, put this on. I wasn't too happy putting it on, but I listened to her, and I was dressed like a girl. That she didn't want any more the business of circumcision to reveal that we are Jews. Later, I remember she was joking about it. She said, you were not the prettiest girl in Poland, but you did okay, she said. My hair was long, not going to a barber, not cutting it for over a year. You can imagine how shaggy I was. And she made a decision. And this decision was, go back where you came from and go straight to the man, Mr. Burka, who doing business with my father, and hope for the best. Especially when she heard that some refugees were moving back already because they heard from their relatives that they left behind. No more Russian shelling of cannon fire. The Russians were retreating and they're going back. Now, you can see here the image of a Polish winter. It doesn't tell you, obviously, how deep the snow is, but it's very heavily snowing. And we were walking in that snow, and we didn't have shoes. And I outgrew my shoes. My mother's shoes fell apart, and we found in garbage pieces of paper and wrapped it around, whatever we could find, we wrapped it around our feet. But we were close to dying. Very lucky for us. Excuse me. Very lucky for us. Farmers with a sleigh pulled by horses, like you see it here. This was the mode of transportation in the deep snow. Nothing moved there, and they didn't have trucks. So they gave us a ride. Otherwise, we would have frozen to death. My mother was close to freezing when she was walking in the snow. She said she fell into the snow, and she felt so peaceful, she said. She didn't want to get up. And these are kind of signs of freezing. You feel too comfortable, and so on. And she, when I once thanked her for it, for saving me, she says, no, I really have to thank you. I am alive because you motivated me. And without you, I would have stayed in that snow. And I gave her that extra strength and adrenaline to continue moving. So because of these rides, we got to Mr. Burka in record time. My mother is standing in front of his house, actually not in front of his house, on the side. She didn't want the family to know what she's going to ask him. And when she comes out, she approaches him. When he finds out that my father was murdered, he was very upset. That they had very good relations. My mother gave him the gold. She says, take it. That's worth a lot of money. It's yours. You are the end of our road. Please give us help. Give us shelter. And he did. He, inside a wooden shed, the floor was made of wood too, and a very, not like this here, but a very expertly cut out panel led into a basement, a very shallow underground basement. And there we spent quite some time. He gave us a lot of straw, a kerosene lamp, a bucket for waste, and twice a week he brought us food. In the morning, he used to knock to take that horrible bucket out, spill it outside, and bring it back, and told us always to be very quiet, because it was so shallow, you could hear voices and very easily. We spent there 20 months. We got to Burka in 1933. I'm sorry, 1943. In this winter of 1943, and were liberated at the end of the war. We were liberated at the end of the year 1944. Now we spent there more than 20 months. Now my mother was very happy that she saw me, finally kind of protected. But she worried about other things, as a mother should. She noticed that I am kind of shriveled up. No exercise, no sun, not really nourishing food, mainly potatoes. And she felt that when we are liberated, and she was always optimistic about liberation, whenever it comes, that she would, when I am liberated, I will become a deficient child. So, well, as an activist woman, she had to do something about it. So she started with me. This computer. She started exercising with me, rubbing my muscles, crawling with me in the basement, despite Mr. Burka telling us not to go out of the hall into the shed. She did go out at night into the shed, opened the window, told me to breathe the air, to walk back and forth quietly, and not to talk, everything quietly. And she was terribly upset that I didn't have any son. She knew the value of the sun for a growing child. Now, she was worried about my mind too, not just my physical well-being. So there was nothing. There was no books. There was no crayons, no paper, nothing. So she devised stories. and very imaginative stories. I should have, after the war, I should have written them down because it would be interesting to, I don't remember. Just one thing I remember, that the stories had a purpose for me to follow it. So she was telling the story and inserting Polish names of Polish personalities into it. Whatever she remembered from her homeschooling. Adam Mickiewicz, Henryk Sienkiewicz. These are difficult Polish words, Polish names. And at the end of the story, after inserting about 6 names, she gave me the test. Okay, so which names did I mention? I had to repeat. Well, sometimes I was good, sometimes I wasn't so good. So she repeated the story, and so it went. I was happy because I had my mother's attention. How my mother didn't go crazy from the situation, it's a mystery and a miracle. Now, in the winter of 44, my mother started acting strange in my eyes. She got up, started whispering to me, "We are getting out soon, we are getting out soon." She heard some language, soldiers yelling outside, a lot of shooting, but the language was like the coming of the Mashiach. It was Russian language, not German language. And she says, "We are coming out." She was getting ready to come out. Then she hears German. And a lot of shooting, a lot of war going on around this area. Eventually, she hears just Russian, and she decides to climb out. So you see this hall here? She climbs up on this little ladder. Half of her body is above the floor, and like timed by a director in the movie again, 4 soldiers burst into the Russian soldiers into the shed with machine guns. They were looking for Germans. They were told to kill Germans no matter who it is. And so she raised her hands and she said, "We are Jews, we are Jews, Yevreya, Yevreya," she yelled. One of them wasn't too impressed with her, didn't believe her, came close, made a fist, hit her hard in the face. She fell back into the hole, bleeding, and he took out a grenade, wanted to throw it in, and the soldier behind it put the gun to his head and says, "Before you throw this grenade, I will pull the trigger. I will kill you. She's not a German. You are not a murderer. You are a liberator." This soldier was a Jew. Now, can you imagine the odds about just tremendous odds against this small group of thousands of soldiers around one of them to be Jewish? Is just absolutely astounding. Many things in my story are astounding. The barbed wire episode, we didn't got blood poisoning out of it. Walking without shoes, in rags around our feet in snow, we didn't get snow bites. Eating garbage, we didn't get stomach problems at all. So it is really amazing. And I'm thankful to whoever it is that protected me. Now, so this Jewish soldier said to me and to my mother, when he found out that we were 20 months in the dark, he said, don't go out. No matter what you do, don't go out, because there is a lot of sun, and the reflection of the sun and the snow will blind you completely, and then you will, I will come back. He ran out and brought back very dirty goggles, which he smeared with dirt for filtering, and I put it on. My face was very little, very tiny with these huge goggles. He adjusted it, and slowly I came out, first time in 20-something months, into the sun. What a pleasure. And then I clung to my mother and I started to cry. Why? Because I saw soldiers. I was always told, be afraid of soldiers. And the soldiers were fascinating, seeing a little boy and a wife and a mother surviving all this. I became to them like a symbol, like a mascot, that, well, this little boy survived. Maybe we have a chance to something like that. And they gave my wife candy, my mother candy, and an avalanche of candy. Who saved my life at that time is the doctor of the Russian division. He approached my mother. He said, they love your boy so much, but they are going to kill him with this candy. If he eats this candy, he will perish. Don't give him any candy. And she listened. She understood that my body will go into shock and so on. She became a famous candy woman in the area, bringing the candy to the Polish kids. We were moving from one place to another, and in DP camps, we were reading the list of the survivors, these people who put their names, and we noticed in one DP camp that my grandma survived, my uncle survived, and one grandpa died of a heart attack. And one was killed after liberation by bandits, which was terrible. My mother remarried, wanted to give me a more or less a sense of normalcy after the war. And here are the picture of my family after the war. Uncle Henry here, he wasn't in the picture of 1935. Look at me there with a haircut. And my stepfather, Ellie, who lost a wife and 2 children in the war. Now, we stayed in Poland from 1945 to 1950. And in 1950, my stepfather insisted that we go to Israel because some of his family found out, survived, and lived in Israel. And we went to Israel. We went, we took two bicycles with us. I remember we went with a train to Italy, and from Italy by boat to Israel. The boat ride was something to forget because it was a terrible boat. And here I come to Israel. I mean, stepping into Israel was like stepping into paradise from Poland, which is cold and rainy and cold. Kind cycle goes on. And here I am, lot of sunshine. There are soldiers in the street, don't bother me. And I learned not to be afraid of them. I had problems adjusting. And I had problems because I got nightmares. I was suffering from terrible nightmares. I was waking up in the mornings, not in the morning, in the middle of the night, screaming. And it was terrible. My mother took me to a psychiatrist. Actually, no, to a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. She just didn't know what to do with me. She was so upset. He said, when he, in his mind, he told her, I cannot do much for her. There is no medication. When he decides that he is strong enough to protect you and himself from his enemies, which he has in the head, the nightmares will go away. That's the best he could do. So what happened? Well, I finished high school, which was surprising under my conditions. Finished high school, and after high school in Israel, as all of you know, you joined the army, the IDF. Go ahead. Now, keep going. Okay. Here I am posing with an ancient Czech rifle, wearing British clothes that the British left. As you can see, the helmet is definitely British, and very primitive stuff. On the other hand, you will see my granddaughter soon, which finished, and some of them maybe know her, Racheli, who finished the army some time ago, was a very, very impressive machine gun there. And she, yeah. Oh, no, okay. And I told her, one thing bothers me about this picture, Racheli. You look tougher than me, I told her. And she does. To me, when I talk to kids here in the States, and they are very impressed with a girl holding a machine gun and knows how to use it. I say she's not just my granddaughter, she's a symbol to all the Jew haters. Hey, we know how to defend ourselves today. I not a long time ago, we observed the holiday of Pesach. And we have there a portion where the Jews in the Haggadah plead, Shpoch Hamatcha al Hagoyim. Okay. And it's the only thing they had were words which they use, hoping for the best. Now we have weapons. I would change now because The rabbis can correct me if they want, but the Haggadah can be added to it. It's not a wrong. I would say, otherwise, if you don't, we will do it. And I mean the idea. Okay. So I spent 2.5 years in the IDF. Down south, if you go south of Beersheba, there is a huge tank camp called Machane Natan. And in Machane Natan, I was in what they called then Her Mesh, which is Her Raglim B'Shuryan. Surprisingly enough, I was fit enough to, after what I went through, to become a Kaf Kuf Shtayim, which means kosher kravi Shtayim, and became a part of Tzahal. Do I have some time to tell how I got rid of my nightmares or not?
I think they want to hear it.
No,
Yes.
no. It has to do with a very famous psychologist by the name of David Ben-Gurion. Of course, I'm joking. He didn't know that he cured me of it. But one time he came to the camp for inspection, and we are there standing on parade grounds, 10,000 soldiers, 8,000 combat and 2,000 support, and hundreds of tanks, and many have trucks, motorized cannons, and in 100-degree weather, waiting for Ben-Gurion. Ben-Gurion comes in, they set up a little bima for him to talk from. He is not happy with it. He calls the commander, tells him, hey, very smart politician, if you know his history. He was so admired by the army that there were songs about it. He and the opposition leader, Menachem Begin, they were the top people, both of them very short, but they were giants of men. And gives the commander of the camp a hard time, to our delight. We didn't like the commander that much. And he wanted to speak to the troops from a tank. There were a lot of newspapermen, photographers, and they rearranged the door, and he gave us a speech. And warriors of the South, you are a steel fist, great orator. By the time we finished, everybody burst in yelling, Ben-Gurion, Ben-Gurion. And spontaneous outbursts are not allowed in the army, but it was overlooked. and I am standing there and taking in all that might in that camp. And if he gave us an order, go into the Sinai and take care of the Egyptians, in my mind, nothing would stop us. And I started crying. My friends got worried a little bit why I'm crying. Too much in the sun, maybe, and so forth. But then later I explained to them, And to the delight of my friends, who I used to wake up by screaming in the middle of the night, I slept peacefully that night. The nightmares reoccurred, but not as frequently. So Ben Gurion is my psychiatrist. Okay. Now, I couldn't work and study in Israel quite successfully. So I moved to the United States, and here I was working and taking part-time classes at the seminary and Jewish Theological Seminary and Pace College. And I decided to go into Jewish education, and life settled down, but I wasn't that satisfied yet because I wasn't married. And the big Mesader Kedushin, you know, I just was hoping that a good wife would turn my way. I was patient enough waiting. I waited until I was almost 30. And sure enough, the wait was worthwhile. I met a girl which came from Detroit. I forgive her for it. And we are married now 52 years. Now we have a wonderful family. Here she is, Susan. Say hello.
Hi.
That's she's my also computer technician. And what can I do? I'm not ashamed of. And we have a wonderful family of 8 grandchildren. 4 of the great children are Aries, 3 boys and a girl, and 4 of the children are Dahlias, 3 girls and a boy. 8 grandchildren. And recently, we came up with 2 great-grandchildren. Okay.
That's our tell.
Toda raba.
Awesome.
We couldn't be happier. This is, by the way, my revenge against Hitler.
Great.
Or not just Jews, but Orthodox Jews, and not just looking Jewish. All of them have blue eyes. Okay, so wherever he is, they're burning in hell. He must be going crazy.
Definitely.
Okay, and thank you for being so patient with me.
Thank you very much. We all appreciated it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Okay, we have it all recorded. That's what you heard before. Okay, I'll stop the recording at this point, but if there are any questions,